All right, we are here. We're live. Excited. Um, Anil, Patricia, excited to be here. First, I want to thank everyone who's joining us live for this session. Everest Group is excited to present a topic on AI and get into some questions and discussions that um, I think will be helpful for everyone and valuable. I think this is a little bit of a unique one for Everest Group because myself and Patricia are here really representing our internal organization, the internal business, and really wanting to share our perspective, but also our actual experience with how this is unfolding for us and our teams and the impact that we're seeing with our organization. But we also have Anil here as well. We'll go through introductions. That is going to talk from an analyst perspective, what he's seeing in the market and how this is changing. But before that, let's get kicked off with where you're from, introductions for us, and if you're here joining us live, we'd love for you to comment, engage with us over comments, share your introduction, and maybe even share what's the weather like. How cold is it where you are at, or maybe brag about how warm it is and make us all feel terrible about where we chose to live. So with that, why don't we kick it off with you, Patricia, with introduction and how cold it is where you are.
I'm Patricia Blair, Senior VP of Business Operations and Technology at Everest Group, a mouthful. My teams handle our research operations, program management, and most importantly, for this particular conversation, the technology solution development. Our goals are to obviously improve the way we work internally, as well as deliver even greater value to our clients. And I am in Dallas, and my grid has held up for those of you aware of the Texas grid issues we have, and it's about 21 degrees. Who's next?
Yeah, so I can go next. So I'm Anil, partner with Everest Group, based out of London. And, I'm going to state in London style, I'm going to state the temperature in Celsius, not in Fahrenheit. So apologies for that, but it's 3 degrees here. So I lead our research in automation and AI and have been tracking these markets for around 8 years now. And of course, it's an exciting time to be in the world of AI. In many ways, especially with generative AI, we're all building the plane as we fly, so to speak, and constantly learning in that journey. So again, I look forward to an interactive session.
Awesome. And Kyle Hayden here, Chief Technology Officer for Everest Group. I am based in Indiana in the Midwest, where it is today 17 degrees Fahrenheit, so very cold with some snow on the ground. And my responsibilities at Everest Group is to really oversee all technology, where we're investing in technology. The major platforms that are helping us run our daily operations, and really thinking about how we can continue to deliver value to our clients, and to our employees through technology. So AI is an important topic for me and something that I think about every day, and how that's changing how we work and the value that we can deliver. So excited to see all the chats coming in. It looks like we got a lot of people in from Dallas, Wisconsin, Michigan, London, Delhi, Bangalore, so all over. So thank you for joining. And I just want to remind folks of the topic and some of the questions that we're going to cover, but really want to make sure that you guys feel like you're part of this as well. So continue to add to the chat, add to any questions that you want us to address. But also we want to hear from you in response to some of these questions. We want this to be a learning and collaborative experience, so that you all can share the impacts that you're seeing, the challenges that you're seeing, and share with each other, and use this opportunity to network with each other as well. But today we're going to cover the topic of distinguishing Gen AI hype from real applications. So what is it that feels like hype versus how are we identifying and seeing real value, moving from pilot to production, and seeing that impact in organizations. Some of the questions that we're going to try to address throughout today's session is what is the current Gen AI landscape from our perspective, and also from yours. We want to hear that from you as well. What are recent real-world Gen AI use cases that industries are investing in? I think there's a lot of people here from a lot of various different industries. Myself and Patricia were very focused on Everest Group operations and the impact that we're making for our clients and our internal users. So it's very business focused, operational focus from that standpoint. But we'd love to hear from you, in your industries, and what you're doing, and the impact that you're seeing. And then what does the future of Gen AI look like? So what are we kind of anticipating and seeing, and are excited about, as we think about how this is going to unfold, and how this will play out. So let's get started with the first question. And again, please ask questions, and we'll make sure we try to address those as well. But let's start with the first one on my list here. What is the current state of Gen AI? How are we seeing this today, currently? And maybe we start with you, Patricia.
Well, so I'm going to use the 3 E's. It's evolving, it's exciting, but it's still experimental. I think the initial wow factor has faded a bit, especially as we've discovered some of its flaws, right? All the hallucinating, coming up with, I'm sure you've heard of the one where it told the New York Times tech editor to get a divorce after talking with a Gen AI chatbot. But there's still a lot, I think, that we don't know. It's like the tip of the iceberg right now. We don't really know what's underneath that. So we're all learning, but it's an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, so I can just chip in here.
Anil,
So see, from my perspective, I think the pace of change has been really, really fast, right? Probably even unprecedented in some ways. So, in terms of tech, in terms of regulation, and so on, there's been plenty of changes ever since the whole chat GPT stuff dropped. Now, I'm going to focus a little bit more on adoption, though, and what it means for enterprises. And from that perspective, 2023, I think, was the year of pilots and POCs. It's continuing into 2024, but we are quickly seeing the conversation changing to, hey, where can I find real value? Where is the real ROI? And, how can I get there really quickly? And now keep in mind, in the last decade or so, we've had many of these technologies come in, think of like metaverse or a blockchain, etc., all of which started out with a big bang, some of which fizzled away. So that cycle between, hey, here's a shiny new object to play with, to the real question of, hey, where can it really add value in an enterprise context, that cycle is kind of shortening, and it's not a surprise, right, in that sense. In any case, let's look at, maybe on the slide, we can see an example of how some of these use cases are panning out. And specifically, this is in core HR. It's not including talent. You can see that things like, for example, employee self-service is actually farthest along in terms of generating real value and crossing over from a pilot stage to a more production stage. And pilot stage is generally more walled garden, and production stages when it starts to scale up to actual users, right? Another thing to point out here is there are multiple categories of tech being used here, right from your core large language models to systems of record with embedded large language models, for instance. Now, there are, of course, so this is just an HR example, but there are, of course, other areas where, for instance, we see greater traction. You can look at, say, customer service as an example, and there, possibly around certain use cases, there is more movement towards the right-hand side. And we have actually outlined 10 of these areas on our generative AI webpage and are continuously adding and updating these. So, if you're interested, do go and check out that page. As we go into the year, we actually expect a few of these use cases maybe to drop out as it becomes evident that, let's say, there's no meaningful ROI at this point, right? And then the ones which survive, or the new ones that are added, we expect to see more movement again of that blue dot towards the right. So in my view, for 2024, much more emphasis and focus on, hey, where is the real ROI? What can we take to production?
Yeah, I love this slide, Anil, and I know you have many others, and I think Patricia and I are fortunate to have the analyst community internally that we can tap into for things like this. But I think HR is a big one. I know there's a question, from Nora in Colorado around, can you provide and include some real examples? Hopefully this is addressing that question. But I think HR is a big one for me. That's something that I'm partnering with a lot internally as the CTO of Everest Group, working with them to identify areas where we can actually accelerate automation and utilize AI. Talent acquisition is a big one that is on our radar right now. How we could use talent acquisition, or how we could use AI to help accelerate talent acquisition and recruiting as we continue to grow, but also thinking about how that could impact you and your organization. So would love to hear others on the line here, how this is impacting your HR, things that we could learn from there. But I think these are great examples, Anil. And just kind of going back to the original question of what's the current landscape, I agree with you, Patricia, as well. We're still very much experimental and learning, and I feel like we experienced a lot of hype in 2023, a lot of excitement, and myself, I went to every single conference I could as a CTO to learn about what other leaders are doing, other organizations are doing. And that was true across the board, that everyone was excited, still concerned about the privacy and security and the governance around that. And I think that's still a major concern, but now it's really shifted to, okay, we believe this is going to add impact. So let's really get into what is the actual real examples and value that we can expect, and where should we focus? Where should we focus our time and energy to drive that value? So, which I think is a good segue into our next question, which is.
So speaking as a practitioner, we actually did a pilot internally, right? So we've done the pilot and we're now into production. But because answering some real world examples, I guess. I think initially most people will do all of this internally, right? Getting a better grasp of all the content you have so that you don't have to dig through databases of information. Gen AI helps you do that a lot faster. So that's an example of something that might go into production. So anybody have any questions about that? We're just starting the production part. And again, it's internal, so I'm not sure we've seen that many folks doing external production where, largely because of the security and privacy concerns.
While we're waiting for some comments on that,
Anil,
can you still hear me, Patricia? Anil?
Yeah. So I think
it
there
looks
was
like Anil said he was going to answer one of the
question.
questions, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
another question, I think, from David Bickerstaff, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's around, hey, would like to understand the adoption rate of companies studying versus implementing, etc. And so keep in mind, see, this is something which is well, a fast-moving target in some ways, right? And it's continuously changing. But when we did an exercise towards the end of last year around our key issues. We call it the key issues study. And as part of that, what we found out was, around 15% have no real plans. 30% we're looking at use cases. 28% were conducting pilots. And then there's a bucket of around 17%, which is little maybe beyond the pilot, but still selective in terms of use cases. And then 10% or maybe less than 10% truly expanding into more broad-based implementation of generative AI. So truly heading towards more production kind of use cases, right? So that number overall from a production perspective is still pretty small. I think large chunk of it is still either identifying use cases or conducting various pilots, right? But again, we hope to see that change pretty rapidly over the course of 2024.
Right. I see another question that I want to address from Robert. What do you recommend as best practice from moving from pilot to production? And I think this is one that was our kind of part of our description in the topic here, and I think it's an important one. And Patricia, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, but I think something that we have done internally, and I think has helped us, when we think about, piloting these use cases and these AI tools, and moving them to production, is, building that muscle and building a team internally that is really dedicated and focused on AI. So we, Patricia and I have built this AI team that is across all departments, that can come in. We meet on a regular basis and talk about different use cases, talk about vendors, market trends, tools that we want to try, and we have this kind of test environment, this culture where we are pushing and really encouraging our team members to bring to us new ideas, but also in a controlled environment where we can test and see the actual value. And on top of that, we've made it a point to include our director of cybersecurity and our general counsel. So our legal team and our security team are part of that team to address the privacy and security concerns, to ensure that they're partnering with us, so that they're not slowing down that value and that pilot to production, so that when we do see that impact and the business and the users are raising their hands saying, yes, this is valuable, we already have a security and legal signed off and we're ready to accelerate faster. So Patricia, do you want to add to that, maybe share a little bit about what we're doing?
Yes.
With some of
So speaking again from the person we're doing it for Everest Group, I think finding a use case, as Kyle said, that is relevant for your organization, where you can actually measure the value of it, right? So for instance, with a pilot we did it for a particular use case, and we knew the use case involved a lot of content, would require quite a bit of storage, quite a bit of computing power, quite a bit of LLM costs, and so on. And so when you have something that's relatively representative, that is still a decently complex use case, you get a much better picture of what you should do going forward into production and what works, what doesn't work, and so on. So one thing we learned with our pilot is that something that we would have taken internally, because we do have some developers who work on AI, what would have taken roughly 3 to 6 months internally to build took 6 weeks, right? So that's one use case. So I wouldn't extrapolate that across other use cases, but it was a significant enough improvement that and again, it was an internal use case, that we thought, you know what, it's time for us to move into production so we can learn more. And even in production, we're going to start with, bite-sized pieces, learn from that before we do anything too aggressive.
Yeah, and if I were to just add to it, so I think so you mentioned, I think both of you mentioned, selection of the right use cases and the right technology for those use cases. And I also see, related to that, a question from Guru, who's asking about use cases in screening candidate database, right? The first level filtering. So by the way, we haven't included that under the HR bucket, but rather that would be under the talent acquisition bucket, right? And all of this is there on our webpage. But to answer your question there can be utility there, but the real question I would ask is that fundamentally, let's say, better than what we can already use in terms of, let's say, the smaller AI models, or even more static models, analytics models just based on core parameters, right? So the question of when to use generative AI, particularly in the context of generative AI, often we refer to large language models. It is also quite tied into what sort of ROI or what sort of incremental benefit can you use or can you get by using generative AI as opposed to other tools, right? And sometimes smaller models are even more efficient and also cost effective, right? So yeah, net the answer on that question is, right now, for me, it does seem like the candidate database filtering a part of it, it may have some applications, but I think existing smaller models generally tend to do a good enough job, right? So that is again ties back into selecting the right use case or selecting the right technology for those use cases.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of where you find that functionality embedded into a lot of the products, applications out there that are suited to talent acquisition, recruiting, ATS, et cetera. So I think
talent CRMs and so on. So,
yeah, you're starting to see that become even more of a norm there of built-in functionality versus do you build it yourself? Patricia, I think you were going to address another question.
Yeah, there was a question from Shadar. I don't know if you want to put that up. What are the best practices for data residency requirements? And Kyle, I'm sure you have some inputs here as well. But it obviously depends on what data, right, that you're going to be applying the Gen AI to. If it's something that's internal and you don't really want to utilize the external LLM portion and you want to keep everything private, you want to do it in a private cloud or on-prem, right? So those are the things that you need to think about, is how important is privacy and security as far as this data is concerned. If it's at all important, you definitely want to keep it in-house, either in the cloud or something private. Then on the LLM side, again, the LLM works together, so you want to make sure that you have you keep privacy very much utmost in your mind. That's what we always we're very sensitive to that. The data residency, it's we've used an internal, like I said, the pilot we did it on the cloud, but in a private server. So that's and it's turned out really well. We know that the downside of that, obviously, is you don't get the benefit, right, of all the the knowledge that the LLM has about the public, but it's definitely outweighed by the benefits of having privacy and security.
Yeah.
Kyle, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, the thing that we were looking at as we were weighing our options there and trying to figure out what is the best technology was, the ability to have some flexibility there, but also what was most important to us was the privacy and control of that data. So being able to, uh, select technology and build an infrastructure that would allow us to have really strict governance and control, gave us the confidence that we could move forward. And like Patricia said, we don't have that, the benefit of some of those major LLMs that have all that built-in learning. As we had to train those models, but that gave us the ability to kind of build that muscle as well. I think what we, where we, going back to kind of pilot to production, one of the things that we did and Patricia's team did really well was we selected a specific use case and restricted that data to that specific use case. So we're only allowing data into that platform to address that specific use case. And just to share a little bit more about that, the current use case that we're solving for is really a kind of an internal knowledge management solution that will allow us to use Gen AI to quickly pull information and get it at the fingertips of our employees, around all the knowledge that we have as an organization. You can imagine as a research organization, we have a lot of data that we've acquired over the years to serve our clients. So we're now surfacing that data to our employees using these AI models that will allow us, to hopefully accelerate faster. And it's been successful. We're moving that to production, and now we're starting to really understand. Okay, what else could we do? How much, what other data can we bring in? But as we do that, we're being really careful to think about, as we bring in data, is it even internally, is it the data that people should see? Are we making sure that people are only seeing data that they are allowed to see internally as well? So putting some guardrails around that.
Yeah, so Kyle, I also see a bunch of questions around different areas, quality assurance, contact center, etc., use cases and tools there. So I think we earlier shared a link to one of our web pages where we have all of this available to view across different areas, right? So CXM, contact center, finance and accounting, HR, quality assurance, software development, so on and so forth. There are around 10 or more areas, right? So I would encourage you to check that out. And I also see some interesting questions come in on. So I see a question from Nora stating, have you said no to AI yet, and where? So I just thought that maybe that might be interesting for both Patricia and Kyle, both of you to answer.
So in our case, yes, right. So even with the pilot, that's why we're doing things internally. We don't want to. We want to make sure that what we're doing makes sense, which kind of addresses Sridhar's question as well. I don't know if you want to put that up. I don't know if we can put two questions up together, because you want to make sure that it's not giving your customers hallucinations, right, as answers. So you need to be very. You need to test it enough so that people who know what the answers might be, especially when you're doing it internally, would be able to flag those kinds of things. And based on that flag, the flags that come up, you can then fine tune the model, right? So you, the other question was, if you have not that much internal data, how hard is it to train? Yes, it's much harder if you have less data. The more data you have, the easier it is to train, because it's got a large volume that it can be trained on, and you can then fine tune a lot quicker as well. So it's if you don't have a lot of internal data, I know that we haven't tested this yet, but you can help with like writing code, that kind of thing. But if you don't have a lot of internal data, it's going to be hard to train something to not hallucinate. So I know that wasn't necessarily the answer you want, but it is the way it is right now. So
I do like Nora's question. Have you said no to AI yet, and where? And I would agree with Patricia on that. But I also think that I feel like it's never. We want to encourage people to really bring ideas, and that's why we built that team. And said, hey, let's form a team where we can really play with AI and see where the value is. But I would love to hear responses in the chat. Where are you guys saying no as organizations, and maybe why? Maybe it's something that we can learn from you as well. But obviously there's some clear ones where it's from a security, from a just ethical standpoint. But I think from a business standpoint, we really want to be open-minded and test, and that's the key there. We will test rigorously and find where it's hallucinating and figure out why it's hallucinating and solve for that.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly add on to that, that, based on the use cases or the frameworks that I'm seeing. So hallucinations and data privacy security are definitely things to be considered. There are also places where you might want to either avoid usage of particularly large models or neural networks where explainability becomes an issue, right? So those kind of use cases, either you avoid usage at all, or you have a human in the loop for verification, right? So think of critical cases in regulated industries in particular. It is important to be able to let's say explain a particular decision, right? Why you approving someone for a loan or something of that sort. So in those cases, I would say tread cautiously. There are ways to enhance the process itself or make it more efficient through the usage of AI, but it cannot be, let's say, a completely automated use case, right? So selectively you can use, but you need to be careful, especially in terms of what it means for your risk of penalty and the cost of that penalty if something does happen. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Sure.
Also, don't use it with math. At least for now, it's not very good at math. So since it's predictive,
I have said, that's a good point, Patricia. I have said no to my children who want to use AI to do their homework. So that's an area where I've said no. You need to learn it. I'm going to move on to another question that I have here. That I know I think this was a comment as well that we got prior to the live session from someone. How are you thinking about selecting the right tool to work with for Gen AI, foundational versus horizontal application versus specialized app versus embedded? I think this is an important one. We've hit around, what is current state, what are use cases, how do you go from production to pilot? But if we step back and say, okay, how do we actually evaluate and see? I think the actual question was, how do you distinguish these really amazing marketing ads around what this AI tool could do versus what is reality? So how are we doing that internally? And maybe, Anil, how are you seeing that, and advising your clients on that as well? So Patricia, I think maybe we'll start with you. I know your team is looking at a lot of different tools and what we could do there.
So I think the first thing, and I know you're going to get sick of us saying use cases, but I think the first thing you need to consider is how you're going to use that AI tool, right? What are the use cases you're going to be using it for? Ideally, prioritize according to the need of the business and the value. How much security you want to ensure is very important when you're trying to decide what to use. How complex are your use cases? Are they relatively simple? Are they quite hard to come up with to train the model? And how much content you have, right? Because again, the more content you have, the easier it is to train. The other thing that we at least considered, and I do believe is quite important, is how agnostic the tool is with the LLM. Do you want to essentially tie yourself to one LLM, like ChatGPT, or do you want the ability to be able to plug and play depending on what your need is? If it's the latter, you probably want to use a platform that has, that you can, like I said, for this use case, you might use ChatGPT as the LLM or OpenAI, or for that other use case, you might want to use Anthropic for your LLM and so on. So you want to have a little bit of that ability. Then beyond that, it's really, what do you think the ROI is? How much does this particular tool cost? And do we have enough internally and, enough use cases internally to justify that? You have to weigh against that as well, though, that, Anil mentioned earlier, blockchain and metaverse, and those kind of fizzled out after a little bit of hype. This might not be equivalent to those types of technologies, but you have to consider that if part of the ROI, although it's more indirect, is where is this going to be in a year, and can you wait a year, right? So if you wait a year, everybody could have be way ahead of you, as opposed to like other technologies that kind of move, it moves in lockstep. Gen AI is like, right? So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in, and Anil, and then would love to hear you hear your perspective from how you're advising your clients. And I want to reiterate, and this was actually a question from Claude, again ahead of this, and I love how he phrased it. He said, "How can companies distinguish between legitimate Gen AI capabilities and exaggerated marketing claims when evaluating potential vendors and partners?" And I love that, because I feel like some of these organizations really do exaggerate with their marketing claims, and and they look amazing, but when you actually use them, it's not as valuable as you would anticipate. And I think from my perspective, I think I think what I always challenge vendors to do is really prove it to me. Don't just do a demo. Don't just give me a marketing ad and sell me these ROIs over a demo, but actually let me pilot it in my own environment with my own data. And I feel like in this specific scenario, when we're talking about AI, and because of the concerns around exaggerated marketing claims that I have as well, is if you can't let me pilot this tool and use my own AI to show value, I don't know that I can trust you as a vendor that this is reality. So I want to do business. I want to partner with those organizations that believe in their product so much that they will allow us to do that pilot and give us that time to prove the value with our data, with our processes, and with our teams. And I've seen big organizations, some of the top players in the market, be open to that, and I've seen some of the larger organizations say, no, we're not open to pilots, and that's kind of where we internally have drawn the line and say, if we can't test it, then we're not willing to make that investment to move forward. So that's a big one for us. The other thing I look at too from my seat is integration capabilities and scalability. And I'm constantly thinking about what are our foundational technology, our foundational platforms that are running our business, and do you have the ability to integrate into those foundational platforms? Do you have a relationship with those partners that we're already strongly connected with? And if not, what is the impact for us? Are we going to have to custom build that integration, and make that investment? So those are my concerns there, and how we address that.
Yeah, so Kyle, so I think a large overlap with what I see as well and advise as well. I think the situation is again it is changing fast, and one part of that may have relevance to how this plays out, right, in terms of validating these claims. Now, as an analyst, validating claims of products that we see and so on is almost an occupational hazard. Obviously, there is a lot of hype around generative AI. So, everyone claims that they have the latest and greatest, right? But there are definitely various ways to see what is really out there. Of course, testing in terms of sandbox testing, etc., can be one way. Pilots, even bake-offs can be possible at some point in time. And you can customize those to your use case to see if it really works in your environment for your data, right? Now, this may be harder at this point in time simply because what we are seeing is that while you have a lot of the foundational models and microservices or APIs associated with those, we are still in the process of that application layer being developed, right? Now, the application layer will be developed for specific use cases or specific industries and so on. So, an example can be think of, let's say, an industry LLM, right? So, banking LLM. Now, that again is far easier to test or run a bake-off or do a small pilot and so on. And it's less expensive as well for these companies to do that for free if you want it for free, right? So I think that development of that application layer will make it somewhat more convenient to test out these products, whether it be even in paid pilots and POCs or whether it be in bake-offs or other kind of situations as well. So I just wanted to add that to what you said, Kyle and Patricia.
Yeah, it's great. Again, just encourage anyone to share, what your experience has been like with evaluating vendors, distinguishing the exaggerated marketing claims versus what's reality. Maybe share some experiences that you've had in the chat here. I think everyone would love to hear. We'd love to see it. But I think again, I think others would love to see that as well. So please share as we move on to the next question. So that we talked a lot about use cases, about moving from pilot to production, about evaluating vendors. Now it gets down to implementation and change management. How do you address how do you prepare your organization for that implementation and addressing the change management of this? And I think I want to say unlike any other technology, but is similar to other technologies in terms of change. It is still a change and a massive change for the organization to adopt and take on. So maybe Patricia, we'll start with you again. Just your thoughts on the implementation and addressing the change management to really see that value fully.
It obviously depends on the size of the organization and what's there. So we have different technology solution. Obviously, Gen AI is very it's very popular right now, right? And so folks are very interested in it. But once you actually have something and you're rolling it out, you need to make sure you have give a lot of visibility to it, ensure that all the different departments who are going to be using it know about it, know how to use it, right? So you want to train them on how to prompt that particular AI tool you're using to get the best answers, and so on. On the other side, if you're not using a tool, I think it's really important that if you start using some public tool, that, and I'm sure everybody realizes that you have very, very good guidelines for your folks as to what, how, when to use those external chatbots. But if you're using something internal, you definitely need a good plan of action. How are you going to roll it out? what kind of questions to ask to get the best answers, and be very specific about what you can use that particular tool for.
Yeah, so I think so definitely change management for me is one of the things that needs to be planned for. Um, and in some ways it tends to be I would say maybe overlooked or de-emphasized, but it can creep up and really take away all the quote unquote on paper ROI benefits that you thought that you would end up getting, right? And change is hard, let's be honest, right? So we have seen that all through the whole digital transformation journey uh, over the last decade or so. Again, companies have brought in uh, a large number of technology or large number of systems, and then employees just struggle to learn each tool or navigate between tools and so on. So change management needs to be thought through holistically. Now again, this is a specialized field in and of itself. There are various change management frameworks, but additional considerations to be dropped in terms of generative AI would also be, hey, how does this impact uh, your processes and the people who are currently responsible for those processes, right? So you may need, for example, a human in the loop. So then how do you think about redesigning the process to accommodate that? You may want to reskill people in terms of using some of these tools, or maybe for other roles, right? Now that some of their time has been freed up. So change management, I cannot emphasize it enough. The other thing which I want to mention is, uh, again, I realize that, we'll have the people who are very familiar with generative AI on this session as well, and people who maybe are just exploring and, dipping toes in the water. So, uh, for folks who are looking to just understand generative AI broadly, I would point you to our generative AI market report. That gives you a fairly decent outline of what is going on, and what are the various components here, who are the various actors, etc. Of course, things are changing very fast, so we'll keep coming out with some of these reports, but I think that would be a good place to start out.
Yeah. I want to address that question too, just around change management. I actually have a little bit of a story to share. I spoke with a colleague last night, and just this topic came up that I was, going to be speaking in this live event. And this individual works at a very large organization, multi-billion-dollar organization, very successful, very strong brand. I won't share who the company is, but as you can imagine, they have AI. They've purchased every tool that you could ever imagine, in terms of the AI that's out there. And I asked this individual, how he's using it, and he says, "I'm not." And the reality, and I asked, why not? That I feel like in your role, you could get a lot of value. And the response, which I think is an honest response, and something that we probably all would see in our organizations, is, I just don't have time. I have my job that I have to do every day. I'm busy with the work that I'm already doing. I don't have time to stop doing what I'm doing and going to learn this new tool. And I think that's true in any technology that we introduce. And I think it's our responsibility as the leaders and the individuals kind of building this technology, investing and delivering trying to deliver that value. I think we have to really think about those individuals who do have a lot on their plate already, and build that time for them to actually train and skill up. And that's the reality. Is we have to make it clear to them that this is for them. There's value for them to skill up in their role, and to start adopting these new technologies, and make the time, and actually carve out the time for them. Like make it an organizational commitment and cultural change that, hey, we see so much value, and we believe this is such a priority that we're going to carve out time. We're going to give you an incentive and that time to actually skill up and invest in yourself. And I think that's a key that we can't overlook. Yeah, as we think about this, and I think that's true in every technology. So again, I want to encourage everyone that's here with us. Share with us what are you doing to address change and address that implementation and get your employees ready for that, and skilling them up, training them, et cetera. So and just driving adoption. There is one question in the chat that I want to quickly address because I feel like I would not be a good CTO if I did not address this. There was a question around help desk tools and whether or not we're seeing use cases and value there. And this is definitely a use case that I am and my team is exploring. We have not moved to production. This is kind of one of those things that we're still kind of piloting early stages, but we do believe that there's a tremendous value. And I think I think this is an example of where AI is really playing a role in just customer service in general. IT support, the help desk is just another type of customer service. But there's some amazing tools and applications out there that I believe is going to really change how we support individuals internally and externally, how we support our clients. Using AI to read through ticket history, to read through questions coming in and provide responses to help those users self-serve and really eliminate a lot of the volume that would actually go to someone on our help desk. So we're excited about what this could be for us and how this could help us accelerate growth with our team and deliver value to our organization. So, which I think helps us really kind of gear us up for the next question on my list, which is could be our last question unless there's other questions from the audience. What is the future of Gen AI? And what are you excited about in your role, and what do you anticipate this year and beyond, and how this will play out? So I've been starting with Patricia every time. I'm going to switch it up. Patricia, I know you just came off mute. Maybe we start with Anil.
Yeah, I think for generative AI, there are various parameters around which you can offer certain predictions, right? So one, for example, regulatory, there has been considerable action already. The EU AI Act is moving forward after discussions and so on. You will have further clarity emerge in other geographies as well, right? So that's one thing which I expect to happen this year. Core tech part, there will be again a lot of these multimodal models would be or would become better or would improve over course of time, and you'll likely also start to see maybe variations of usage of these large language models, right? So maybe stacked or maybe parallelized as well, and other diffusion based models, etc. But for me, I think key thing, and we have already covered some of this before, right? Key thing from an enterprise perspective is adoption. So more focus on use cases with higher ROI, greater development in the application layer, which will lead to easier adoption. And then, distinguishing between what is really worthwhile from a generative AI perspective versus what is, just something you can play around with and not really get ROI
from. So the only prediction I feel comfortable making about Gen AI is that it'll be very, very different in December 2024 than it was last month in December 2023. I think there's a lot of hype, both on the negative, it's going to destroy the world, and the positive, it's going to cure all our healthcare problems, right? So there's a lot of hype. I think 2024 is going to kind of work through that hype to see what really is more realistic. That said, I think our research analysts are really better at the prediction game. So, they look at this daily. They pay attention to the market. So I would just kind of check into Everest Group every now and again, and I think you'll be much better able to navigate the Gen AI terrain.
Yeah. As a wrapping up, I'd love to hear in the chat, your predictions and what you're seeing in your organization, or what you're excited about for your organization or your industry when it comes to AI. And I'll close with my comments and my predictions. I'm fortunate, like Patricia said, the analysts at Everest Group is something that we get to tap into, and we have our own advisory team. Patricia and I have developed, have built this technology advisory team at Everest Group that advises us on, there are our top analysts that are advising us on what's going on in the market, what we should be focusing on, how we should be using this internally to drive value, and what things that we're doing. So I love that, and it as a CTO, it really helps me accelerate growth with my teams. But what I'm most excited about is, what I believe could be tremendous value for me personally, and this is my own personal selfish excitement, is the area of data analytics and what AI could mean for us in terms of being able to build out, the futures of data warehouses, the futures of data platforms, the futures of data engineering, and how we can actually bring that to the fingertips of your average everyday end user, and do the type of analytics that would normally require a very, very high level engineering role, and how AI could maybe unlock some of that power for our everyday users. So that's exciting for me because it's, I think with any organization, having that insight and having the ability to do deep data analytics to drive insights and drive decisions is super powerful. And I think that will be a game changer for us as we continue to explore that. So any last questions, Patricia, Anil, any last closing comments as we wrap up here?
Yeah, no, I will just echo what Patricia said, although I made a couple of predictions. I will echo what Patricia said. Things are changing at an unprecedented pace. So it is really exciting, but at the same time, from an enterprise perspective, it's necessary to keep the eye on the ball, which is, it's all very good to look at it and be excited about it, but also then see where it works, and can provide you real value, even potentially competitive advantage. You may want to keep your eye out on disruptors who are using this technology and so on. So for that, it is necessary to be continually updated and just stay in the know and experiment.
My last word is that I don't believe they will be our overlords until at least 2025. So you have 1 year to look forward to a minimum. So.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all. This has been great. You guys have left a lot of questions, a lot of comments. This has been really fun and exciting. Just a reminder, there's a link in the chat around getting our generative AI market report. So feel free to follow that, and please reach out if you have any other questions. We'd love to engage with you on this even further, and see how we can help you and help each other.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.